Sri Bhagavan reveals the supreme reality of Brahman. It is absolute existence. So, in his spiritual instruction, he graciously reveals his own existence, his very being. It is not something that can be objectified. We cannot point to it and say, it is this, it is that. Nor is there anything else beside it that we can say, it is like this, and it is like that. Rather, it is absolute existence, indivisible, one without a second, that is absolutely one with nothing else existing whatsoever. It is the reality. For the sake of immortality and for the sake of bliss, this absolute existence, supreme truth, ought to be realized. In this realization is found the perfect fullness and peace without beginning and without end. How is it that we can realize this? By knowing our own existence. And in saying our own, I do not mean to say that it is a possession or an attribute or a quality or any such thing. But rather what is indicated is the truth of your very being. What is your very being? What truly is your existence? Whatever that is, it is that always, without a beginning, without an end, without a break or interval of any kind. Seek within yourself to know that which is invariably existent, not more at one time and less at another, not subject to change, not subject to birth or death. What you truly are, you are always. What in you corresponds to always? Certainly this invariable, immutable existence cannot be the body. The body is born, the body dies, the body undergoes all kinds of changes, from growth to decay. The body has all kinds of changeful activities and qualities. Your very existence is something other than that. And if you would realize the truth conclusively, blissfully, you must know totally the self's freedom from the body. You are not the body. You are not in a body. You do not even actually possess a body. Any definition regarding your existence, yourself, in terms of the body, is simply a mistake, a bit of confusion. That confusion gives rise to a false sense of bondage and consequent suffering. Your true existence is not so bound, is not the body. And in realizing this, you liberate yourself from all kinds of suffering. What is it about you that exists perpetually? Not more at one time and not less than at another. What is it that exists fully so? Whether your mind is in the waking state, a dreaming state, or a deep dreamless sleep state. Certainly in all those states, the entire content of the mind is found to change, to appear and disappear. From the subtlest notion of I to the most formed notion of this. All of that changes. All of that is imagined in the state of mind to which it pertains. But you exist the same throughout. What is this you? To mix up and in imagination combine the changeless with the changeful, the real with the unreal, the self with the not self, is not wise. To keenly discern the self's innate freedom from the mind and all of its content is the dawning of wisdom. What is your essential existence? If conceived of as an individual I, there is a corresponding this and all kinds of differences, such as the world, God, oneself, and such. But what truly is the nature of yourself? according to the form or corresponding to the form attributed to I, the this or objectified aspect of your experience will appear. What form does the I actually have? One existence, absolute and invariable, is misperceived as I and as this. Oneself, God, the universe. If by inquiry to know oneself, the I notion is abandoned, the this correspondingly subsides. All differences vanish, and the one absolute existence, birthless and deathless, phaseless and unconditioned, remains, known to itself, by itself. Inquire. Trace your own sense of existence to its actual nature. Then Sri Bhagavan reveals his own existence. Nothing else, no one else is involved. He reveals his own existence within you, as you. The only you there actually is. Not a body, not a mind, not an ego entity, but true being. Inquire to know yourself. And if in the course of such inquiry you have a question this morning, please feel free to ask it. Or if you wish to relate your own experience, please feel free to share it.
Thank you, Master. One of the reflections that came up while listening to your discourse was that discriminating between what best I could follow in your direction and any other point of view was that there's nothing in the dream world or in the waking world that could ever reward the assumed individual for having given itself up. In other words, there's nothing, or even there's no proof coming from either of those worlds. Reality is kind of its own reward. The word isn't worthy, but it seemed important to keep a discrimination between the imagined and the real in that way.
The reality is often described as being of the nature of Satchidananda, being consciousness bliss. Consider bliss. Absolute bliss. Unveiled, not hidden at all. What more reward could one want? The sign of realization, or the characteristic of reality, is not known in the unreal, whether it be in a waking state or dreaming state or any other state of mind. The mind cannot measure it. The mind cannot know it. Indeed, the mind has no knowing ability whatsoever. The reality knows itself. Since it is the ever-existent, on the one hand it is a bit ridiculous to speak of having a reward as if it is something attained. On the other hand, it's liberation from all of the imagined bondage. So it is known as the supreme attainment, beyond which there is nothing else whatsoever. Everything else acquired or attained, or obtained in some manner, serves a further purpose to something else, which in turn is for something else, which in turn is for something else. But the realization of the true self is its own purpose. It doesn't serve another purpose. Yet realizing it, all the purposes of life are fulfilled.
how to achieve the reality?
By knowing oneself. Without knowledge of the self, the reality, the Supreme Brahman, is not realized. By knowledge of the self, the reality stands self-revealed. The purpose of the scriptures, their meaning, the purpose of spiritual practice and such, is ultimately to know oneself. Oneself should not be considered to be the small individual being. That is just imagined limitation or an idea superimposed upon the reality of the self. The self should be known as it is.
The bliss that is an effect of self-realization, it must be known through the mind and experienced through the body. Without the mind and body, there would be none of that, correct?
Your statement assumes that bliss is insentient, like an object. Bliss is of the nature of pure consciousness, and it experiences or knows itself, free of the mind, free of the body. It is not an effect of realization, it is of the very substance of realization.
So it's not the bliss that comes and goes, the experience that is experienced.
What comes and goes is but a reflection, an expression. The reality does not come and go.
So there are two kinds of bliss then.
There is one kind of bliss. With superimposed limitations, it seems to come and go. Really, it's the limitations that come and go. Whenever you experience happiness in any form, It is the happiness of the self shining forth, but the experience is limited to the scope of the limitations that you imagine for it. Those limitations are rooted in your misidentifications, what you falsely regard as yourself. If you would abandon all misidentifications, being would stand self-revealed, unbound in any way, and bliss is being.
It's not always obvious when there are misidentifications.
It requires discrimination in order to abandon them. On the one hand, they may seem like they're not obvious, but as soon as you commence to examine any particular one, it stands out as very obvious.
And so you would only do that if you're feeling bad. Correct? There would be no impetus to do it otherwise.
The desire for happiness becomes the desire to discriminate or to inquire. Unalloyed happiness alone is our real nature. Anything less is completely unsatisfactory.
Sometimes I feel a depth of presence, but at the same time there is a subtle sense of sorrow or sadness. That is a limitation.
What is the cause of the sorrow?
I think sometimes I feel a sense of hopelessness.
About what?
That I can't do this on my own.
Who says you're on your own? Bhagavan is always with you. The idea that you're on your own is just another piece of imagination.
I think sometimes
Besides, the hopelessness is not really true hopelessness, if I can call it such. The moment you feel dissatisfied, you strive to gain happiness. If you don't strive spiritually, you'll strive in some worldly way. But you're not satisfied unless you have complete happiness, because that's your nature. So your hopelessness is only so-called. It's not really hopelessness.
because of the push because of what it inspires to.
Because your very nature is happiness, and you won't be satisfied with anything less than your nature. Your nature impels you to search.
You're right. So even the hopelessness is bliss in disguise.
Yes, or we may say the hopelessness is a superficial concept. Dive into the depths of your being.
So not into the depths of the concept.
A concept's not very deep. From another angle of vision, before deciding that the path is hopeless, first you must do your very best to tread it.
To tread?
Mm-hmm. Then you can decide whether the path is hopeless or not.
What do you mean by that?
If you make up your mind that it is difficult or hopeless before actually trying, it's not an accurate measurement.
Trying for self-realization?
Mm-hmm. First try with all your heart, all your introverted mind, all your spiritual strength, all your devotion, etc. First try. and do that consistently. Then we'll see if any hopelessness remains.
Sometimes this sounds silly to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
That's okay, we're up for silliness.
This is maybe stupid too. So it feels sometimes like I have to cross off everything on the list so that I can have a moment. I have to get all these things accomplished before I can rest enough to. I mean.
What do you need to accomplish? What's on the list?
Filling all the orders for the business, taking care of the property, appeasing the tenants.
Yes, some of those things can go on almost endlessly.
Yes.
Not truly endless, only the absolute reality is eternal. But some of those tasks can seem to go on and on and on. So, you're not going to delay your spiritual practice for that, are you?
I know, but I feel the separation between that and my spiritual practice.
Yet the same self is existing when you're engaged in all those things as other times.
I know that too.
If you truly knew that, really knew that, there would be no separation. If you truly knew the self which is ever existent, there would be no difference at any time, no sorrow, no despair, but only happiness and peace and real freedom, consistently, continuously.
So it's not that those things don't have to get done. They still need to get done. They still need to be accomplished, the tasks.
For the time being, they're not eternal.
They're not eternal.
They're not eternal. For the time being, there are tasks, and tasks get done. They're not the purpose of life.
So you don't set them aside in order to realize your true nature.
The realization of one's true nature is not dependent on a particular action, such as doing something or refraining from doing something.
Doesn't it depend on stopping the it must depend on stopping.
On stopping the ignorance, not the actions of the body.
You don't need a break, and you don't need to.
If you take a break from your business there that you described, or dealing with the tenants, or caring for the property, but you don't engage in inquiry and maintain the same ignorance as before, what good is it? What you need to take a break from is from ignorance.
So it's not about being still at all.
Stillness means, according to the Maharshi, the destruction of all name and form. Understand name to be all that is conceivable. Understand form as all that which is perceptible. It does not refer to physically being bodily still. A corpse is bodily still. Is it realized for all that?
Will you say that last line again?
A corpse is bodily still. Is it realized, self-realized for all that, for being still? Spiritual stillness is not to be equated with bodily stillness. In the spiritual sense, stillness means not deviating from your true nature. Since such deviation is only an illusion, it means not straying into delusion, not conjuring up or adhering to ignorance, where the sense of I remains in the self and the self alone, and is not misidentified with a body or as a performer of action, etc., or as an experiencer in the world. That is stillness.
So Bhagavan talks about the true heart being on one side of the chest. And I feel like when I put my attention on the heart or my chest, it seems to bring me back, in a sense.
At no point does Sri Bhagavan advocate meditation on a particular side of the chest.
But do you know what the reference I'm speaking?
Yes, but you need to look at those references clearly and carefully. He doesn't advocate meditating upon a point in the chest. He advocates meditation upon the nature of the self, inquiring, who am I? In which case heart ceases to be considered something subtle or physical, with location in the body, etc., but rather means the very center of one's being.
But they were talking about it having a specific location on the right side versus the left side of the chest.
And how are you going to connect that with the rest of the instruction?
It doesn't work. That's why I'm talking to you about it.
Okay, so then what is the question about it?
Why doesn't it work? If he speaks about it.
Discussion about various aspects of yogic lore is not to be equated with the essential teaching of knowledge. Then in the portion of talks with the Maharshi that we were reading last Friday, previous to this past Friday, the Maharshi, in speaking about the various descriptions of the heart, found in various scriptures and other places, says that is only for those who can appreciate only relative knowledge. It is not absolute knowledge. That which is really the center of your being or the true heart has no location, is utterly bodiless. Left and right, up and down cannot possibly apply to it. It is not an object of perception, physical perception, or subtle or yogic perception.
So when you say that to me right now, it feels sometimes like I'm backing up from the body, but the body is still there. There's a sense of duality between the unseen me, which is the one that's not the body, and yet the body is still perceived.
Perceived by what?
So it's a mental concept that the unseen is seeing the seen.
No, it may be accurate as far as it goes, but why do you think the seen still exists on its own?
Why do I think it does?
It is true you are unseen. You are the knower of the body, but you are not the body. That much is true.
And the knower of the body has no form at all, no location.
But when you add to that, but the body is still there, where is there?
It's still perceptible.
In a world assumed to be existing externally from the position of the body?
No, there isn't a world externally. Is that what you're asking me? Is the world...
From the position of thinking the world is external, which is said from the perspective of being the body, from that perspective alone you say the body is still there. The plain simple truth is you are bodiless. And the senses, being integral to the body, do not show you reality.
Yet reality is not somewhere else.
Reality is locationless. Location is an idea conjured up in the mind, in the waking state. Just as you cease to regard the body as yourself, likewise the senses should not be regarded as yourself, nor should they be regarded as determining reality. The senses cannot show you real existence. When you say, the body is there, you're referring to sensory perception, apart from which you have no experience of the body whatsoever. You are not the body, and you are not the senses.
So I can't do any of this.
What do you mean?
That's the helplessness I'm feeling, is that I'm unable to do anything about this.
Unable to do anything about what?
Transcending the body and the senses.
Sure you can. You can inquire deeply and consistently. You can devote yourself to realizing the truth of the self that transcends all name and form.
And I don't have to stop activity to do it.
No, just stop ignorance. And if the ignorance is there, you make an earnest effort to inquire, question, examining your own experience in the light of higher knowledge. Discerning and discriminating, sifting what is yourself from what is not the self.
And that's an ongoing practice, correct?
It is the only continuous practice. Every other kind of practice would be caught up in thought or dependent upon the dualities one is trying to transcend. Consequently, they cannot be continuous.
So there's never going to be a time when I will not practice that.
Find out. In the realization of the truth, in which there are no distinct things such as realizer and that which is realized, there is no practice. Until or unless that is realized conclusively, without the least trace of the possibility of any doubt or difference, one should practice ardently, intensely, to the best of her ability. It's a practice of knowledge, not action, but knowledge. And knowledge alone yields liberation from all that imagined bondage.
So this is the kind of inquiry that you don't need to do, honestly. Truly. It's not a doing. It's an inquiry that's not a doing. If it's knowledge.
It's not a doing, it's not an action, but it does require full effort.
Which is full concentration in each moment.
The entire focus being upon your very existence, to know yourself. And yes, for someone who is deeply, continuously inquiring, every moment is profound.
So true inquiry then, moment to moment, really isn't about asking who am I?
Or it's really asking, who am I?
Or it's really asking who am I?
Asking, who am I?
But it's done by knowledge and not by a question, a mental question.
That's correct.
A constant stream of knowledge.
That's right.
Okay.
And that constant stream of knowledge itself manifests as the discrimination that sifts the real from the unreal,
Right.
the self from the not self.
It's like a vortex or something.
It's the end manifesting as the means.
So, when you were speaking with Jay, and you're describing a kind of totally introverted, it just was clear to me that I was adding something onto this path. I don't know how to describe it, but it's for instance like Friday night. It seemed like that there's some huge benefit to making that inquiry very active. And it may not be the absolute, though. But it seems like, because it seemed like, okay, there's one where it's sort of passive, where it feels like there's something deep. And it seems like, okay, this is like, something really deep and you want to explore it. Maybe it feels more passive. But then there's another type of inquiry that seems like it's more active, like, this cannot be it. What is my nature?
The qualities are conceived within the mind. The inquiry is only singular, whether it's manifesting as diving into the depths or the hunting down and destruction of tendencies, misidentifications and attachments.
It wouldn't matter, in other words.
It's like differentiating between being and consciousness.
Okay. The intention is the key. Yeah, because in a certain sense, this is so formless. And the end is totally formless, but it seems like because I have to cease ignorance, that's the issue. So it seems like that discrimination seems like it has to get finer on what is real and what is unreal.
All right, but where do you carry the ignorance? Do you have a bundle of it that you can show me? Do you have an ounce of ignorance, a pound of ignorance?
Yeah.
Does it have dimension or mass?
It's usually a mass, yeah, but if you had to say, where's that warehouse of the mass, show me, your warehouses.
What can you show?
But it's funny because one little idea can be a warehouse because it's imagined to be so.
It appears that way. One thought manifests as an entire world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And yet it's just a single thought of me, in a certain sense, as something objective.
All right. There's the necessity for the destruction of ignorance. What is the ignorance? How can you be ignorant of yourself? Who is ignorant of himself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Because those are assumptions. Okay. Yeah, because, before it was like, there's liberation, there's ignorance. And obviously I'm on that other side with it.
All of ignorance is dependent upon, known by, and contained within the one who is supposedly ignorant. What is his nature? If we simply inquire into who is ignorant, ignorance ceases to exist, for it is not real.
मय्यनन्तमहाम्बोधौ विश्वपोत इतस्ततः भ्रमति स्वान्तवातेन न ममास्त्यसहिष्णुता.
Janaka said, "In me, the boundless ocean, the arc of the universe moves hither and thither, impelled by the wind of its own nature. I am not impatient."
मय्यनन्तमहाम्बोधौ जगद्बीची स्वभावतः उदेतु वास्तमायातु न मे वृद्धिर्न च क्षतिः.
In me, the limitless ocean, let the wave of the world rise or vanish of itself. I neither increase nor decrease thereby.
मय्यनन्तमहाम्बोधौ विश्वं नाम विकल्पना अतिशान्तो निराकार एतदेवाहमास्थितः.
In me, the boundless ocean, is the imagination of the universe. I am highly tranquil and formless. In this alone do I abide.
नात्मा भावेषु नो भावः तत्रानन्ते निरञ्जने इत्यसक्तो स्पृहः शान्त एतदेवाहमास्थितः.
The self is not in the object, nor is the object in that, which is infinite and stainless. Thus, it is free from attachment and desire and tranquil. In this alone do I abide.
अहो चिन्मात्रमेवाहम् इन्द्रजालोपमं जगत् अतो मम कथं कुत्र हेयोपादेयकल्पना.
Oh, I am really consciousness itself. The world is like a juggler's show. So how and where can there be any thought of rejection and acceptance in me?
तदा बन्धो यदा चित्तं किञ्चिद् वाञ्छति शोचति किञ्चिन्मुञ्चति गृह्णाति किञ्चिद् धृष्यति कुप्यति.
Ashtavakra said, "It is bondage when the mind desires or grieves at anything, rejects or accepts anything, feels happy or angry at anything."
तदा मुक्तिर्यदा चित्तं न वाञ्छति न शोचति न मुञ्चति न गृह्णाति न हृष्यति न कुप्यति.
Liberation is attained when the mind does not desire or grieve or reject or accept or feel happy or angry.
तदा बन्धो यदा चित्तं सक्तं कास्वपि दृष्टिषु तदा मोक्षो यदा चित्तं सक्तं सर्वदृष्टिषु.
It is bondage when the mind is attached to any particular sense organ. It is liberation when the mind is not attached to any of the sense organs.
यदा नाहं तदा मोक्षो यदाहं बन्धनं तदा मत्वेति हेलया किञ्चित् मा गृहाण विमुञ्च मा.
When there is no I, there is liberation. When there is I, there is bondage. Considering thus, easily refrain from accepting or rejecting anything.
कृता कृते च द्वन्द्वानि कदा शान्तानि कस्य वा एवं ज्ञात्वेह निर्वेदाद् भवत्यागपरो व्रती.
Duties done and not done, as well as the pairs of opposites, when do they cease and for whom? Knowing thus, be intent on renunciation and desireless, through complete indifference to the world.
कस्यापि तात धन्यस्य लोकचेष्टावलोकनात् जीवितेच्छा बुभुक्षा च बुभुत्सोपशमं गताः.
Rare indeed, my child, is that blessed person whose desire for life enjoyment and learning have been extinguished by observing the ways of men.
Anityam sarvamevedam tapatritaya dushitam asaram ninditam heyam iti nishchitya shamyati.
A wise man becomes quiet and realizing that all this is vitiated by the threefold misery and is transient, unsubstantial, contemptible, and worthy to be rejected.
Kosau kalo vayakim va yatra dvandvani no nrunam tanyupeksha yatha prapta varti siddhimavapnuyat.
What is that time or that age in which the pairs of opposites do not exist for men? One who, quitting those, is content with what comes of itself attains perfection.
Nana matam maharshinam sadhunam yoginam tatha drashtva nirvedamapannaha ko na shamyati manavaha.
What man is there who, having observed the diversity of opinions among the great seers, saints, and yogis, and become completely indifferent to learning, does not attain quietude?
சன்மாத்திர ஸ்வரூப நிதித்தியாசம் உரைக்கும் அத்தியாயம். ஒரு காலும் ஒரு பொருளும் உண்மையில்லை, உண்மையென காண்பதெல்லாம் சுத்த பொய்யே. தற்காதி மானமுடன் நாயும் காலை தயங்கிய பொய்யும் அதிஷ்டானமேயாம். அருகாதி ஜோதிக்கும் ஜோதியான அதிஷ்டான பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை. இருகாதி மறைமுடிகள் அனைத்தும் சொல்லும் இயல்பிதுவே என்பதனை இங்கு சொல்வான். இப்பொருளை கேட்டுணர்வோருடனை முக்தி இசைந்திடுவர் இதிலிரையும் ஐயமில்லை. சிற்பொருளின் கற்பிதமாய் தோன்றா நின்ற ஜகத்துக்கு சதசத்தாய் என்றும் இல்லை. அல்பமிலா அதிஷ்டான சத்தை தானே ஆரோப சத்தை என தோற்றலாகும். கல்பிதமால் சத்தையதேயாயும் காலை களங்கமிலா அதிஷ்டான சத்தையேயாம். அத்வைத பரத்துக்கே சுபாவ சத்தை அழியாமல் இருப்பதனால் அதுவே சத்தா. இத்வைத ஜகத்துக்கு சுபாவ சத்தை இளமையினால் யாவும் மித்தையேயாம். மித்தையென காண்பதுவும் மாயும் காலை மேவும் அதிஷ்டான பர பிரம்மம் தானா. நித்தியமாய் நிகழ்த்தியவ பிரம்மம் தானே நிர்மலமா நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். கற்பிதமாய் சர்ப்பத்தின் சத்தை தன்னை களங்கமர ஜோதிக்கில் அந்த சத்தை. சர்ப்பமதின் அதிஷ்டான வடிவாம் ரஜ்ஜு சத்தையலார் சர்ப்பத்தின் சத்தை அன்றே. அப்படியே ஆயுங்கள் ஜத்தின் சத்தை அதிஷ்டான பிரம்மத்தின் சத்தையேயாம். எப்பொழுதும் சத்தாம பிரம்மன் தானே இருமையிலா நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். நின்னிடையில் கற்பிதமாய் கனவின் கண்ணே நிகழ்வுற்ற ஜகத்துக்கு நினது சத்தை. தன்னையலார் ஜோதிக்கில் சுபாவ சத்தை தானணுவும் இலது போல் நனவின் கண்ணே. உன்னிடையில் கற்பிதமாய் ஒளிரா நின்ற உலகுக்கும் சுதசத்தாய் இளமையாலே. அந்நியமில் சத்தான பிரம்மன் தானே அவ்விதமானின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். தேகமென பொறிகளென உயிர்களென்ன தியங்கியிடும் மனதென்ன புத்தி என்ன. ஆகுமகங்காரமென சித்தமென்ன அதன் மூலா ஞானமென இவையனைத்தும். பாகமுற உளவென்னும் பலவான் சத்தை பார்த்திரிலோர் பரபிரம்ம சத்தையேயாம். ஏகபர சத்தாம பிரம்மன் தானே எப்போதும் நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். பூதமென பௌதிகமாம் பேதமென்ன புலன்களென புசிக்கின்ற போத்தாவென்ன. வேதமென ஸ்மிருதி என்ன நூல்களென்ன விதி என்ன நிஷேதமென விதிப்போனென்ன. பேதமுறும் போகமென மோட்சமென்ன பிறங்கிய இவ்வேதமெல்லாம் சுத்த பொய்யே. ஆதியிலா பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை அதுதானே நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். பலவிதமாம் ஜாதி என நீதி என்ன பகுப்புற்ற ஆசிரம பேதமென்ன. சலனமுறு கருமமென கர்த்தாவென்ன சாதிக்கும் பலனென்ன சதசத்தென்ன. களனமுறும் காட்சியென காண்போன் என்ன கருதிய இவ்வேதமெல்லாம் சுத்த பொய்யே. அலைவு பெறா பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, அதுதானே நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். பெருமை மிகு ஸ்தலம் என்ன, தீர்த்தம் என்ன, பிறங்கியிடும் தெய்வமென சேவை என்ன, மறுவியிடும் தர்மமென பாவம் என்ன, மற்றுண்ணும் ஸ்வர்க்கமென நரகம் என்ன, இருமையென ஒருமையென நானாவென்ன, இது முதலாம் வேதமென சுத்த பொய்யே. அருவமதாம் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, அதுதானே நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். பாகமுற அகத்துணரும் அகம் விருத்தி, பலவிதமாய் புறத்துணரும் இதம் விருத்தி. தேகமுதன் நான் என்னும் துவைத்த விருத்தி, திகழ் சாட்சி நான் என்னும் சாட்சி விருத்தி. ஏகபர நான் என்னும் அகண்ட விருத்தி, இவ்விதமாம் விருத்தி எல்லாம் சுத்த பொய்யே. ஆகும் ஒரு விருத்தியுமில் பரமே உண்மை, அதுதானே நின்னுடைய நிஜஸ்வரூபம். அமலமிலா அஜ்ஞான மனதின் தன்மம், ஆன்மாவின் விஞ்ஞான மனதின் தன்மம். அமர்மருவும் பவபந்தம் மனதின் தர்மம், மாசற்ற மோட்ச நிலை மனதின் தன்மம். அமர் மனதே இளமையினால் அவற்றின் தன்மம், ஆகினவ ஞான முதல் இருப்பதெங்கே. சமமதுவாம் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, சந்ததமும் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். சாந்தி முதற் சாதனமும் மனதின் தன்மம், சாதிக்கும் ஸ்ரவணமும் மனதின் தன்மம். ஆந்தரமாம் மனனமுமே மனதின் தன்மம், அங்குற்ற தியானாதி மனதின் தன்மம். ஏந்திடும் மனதுருவே இலாமையாலே, இதன் தன்மம் எனும் இவைகள் இருப்பதெங்கே. சாந்தமதாம் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, சந்ததமும் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். காணலிடை கற்பிதமாம் பேதே போலும், கனவினிடை கற்பிதமாம் உலகே போலும். ஞானகணமான பரபிரம்மத்தின் கண், ஞாலமெல்லாம் கல்பிதமாய் தோற்றலாலே. ஆன இவை அதிஷ்டான பிரம்மம் அல்லால், அந்நியமாய் தோற்றுவதும் சுத்த பொய்யே. ஈனமிலா பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, எப்போதும் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். உலகும் பொய் உடலும் பொய் உயிரும் பொய்யே, உடலினிடை உற்ற பல கரணம் பொய்யே. மலமும் பொய் மயலும் பொய் மனதும் பொய்யே, மனோமயமாய் தோற்றியவை யாவும் பொய்யே. நிலமும் பொய் ஜலமும் பொய் அனலும் பொய்யே, நிலை மறுவா காற்றும் பொய் விண்ணும் பொய்யே. சலனமுறா பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, சந்ததமும் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். மனது முதல் ஒரு 4 கரணமாக, மருவியிடும் மத்தியான்ம வடிவும் பொய்யே. பிணையவையின் விஷயமெனும் சங்கற்பாதி, வேதமதாம் அதிபூத வடிவும் பொய்யே. இனியவையின் அதிஷ்டான தெய்வமென்னும், இந்து முதல் அதிதேவ வடிவும் பொய்யே. அநியமிலா பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, அனவரதம் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். அறிவு பெறும் சொத்திரமே முதலாய் தோன்றும், ஐம்பொறியா மத்தியான்ம வடிவும் பொய்யே. அறிவு மதன் விஷயமெனும் சத்தமாதி, ஐம்புலனாம் அதிபூத வடிவும் பொய்யே. செரியுமதன் அதிஷ்டான தெய்வமென்னும், திக்கு முதல் அதிதெய்வ வடிவும் பொய்யே. சிறிதிலதாம் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, சின்மயமாம் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். கர்மமுறும் வாக்கு முதல் கருவி ஐந்தாய், காண்கின்ற அத்தியான்ம வடிவும் பொய்யே. மறுவுமதன் விஷயமெனும் வசனமாதி, வகுப்பதுலாம் அதிபூத வடிவும் பொய்யே. கருதுமதன் அதிஷ்டான தெய்வமென்னும், கணன் முதலாம் அதிதெய்வ வடிவும் பொய்யே. நிர்மலமாம் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, நிரந்தரமாம் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். பன்னியவார் அத்தியான்ம மதிபூதங்கள், பகுப்புற்ற அதிதெய்வம் அனைத்தும் பொய்யே. மன்னிய நித்யானந்த விவேகமாதி, மாசற்ற சாதனமும் சுத்த பொய்யே. தன்னிய நான் மாசிரிய சகவாசாதி, தகமை மிகும் சரசரிதம் அனைத்தும் பொய்யே. அந்நியமில் பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, அகண்டமதாம் அதுவே நின் நிஜஸ்வரூபம். முக்தியுற வேண்டுமென இச்சை செய்தன், மோட்சத்தின் பொருட்டே தன் உயிர் தரித்தல். பக்தியுடன் நன்றாக விசாரம் செய்தல், பாங்காக பரபிரம்ம ஞானமேதல். இத்வைத ஜகத்தையெல்லாம் ஆரம்பத்தல், இத்தனையும் பரமார்த்த தசையில் பொய்யே. அத்வைத பரபிரம்மம் ஒன்றே உண்மை, அதுவே நீ அணுவும் இதில் ஐயமில்லை. வீடுலுரா சாதனமோ நான்கும் முற்றோன், விசாரத்தில் அதிகாரியானோன் என்னல். பேதமுரா ஜீவபர ஐக்கியந்தானே, பேசியிடும் நூலுக்கு விஷயமென்னல். போதமறை முடிவிற்கும் பிரம்மத்திற்கும், போதக போத்திய பாவ பந்தம் என்னல். ஏதமுறும் அஞ்ஞானம் அனைத்தும் நீங்கி, எப்போதும் சுகிப்பதுவே பலமாம் என்னல். ஈது முதல் பலவிதமாய் பகுத்தங்கெங்கே, இயம்பியதாம் எப்பொருளும் சுத்த பொய்யே. பேதமுறும் இவற்றையெல்லாம் பகுத்தங்கே, பேசியிடும் சொலவுகளும் சுத்த பொய்யே. மாதவனே அப்பொய்யும் மாயும் காலை, மன்னுமதிஷ்டான பர பிரம்மம் தானாம். மாதலினால் அகண்ட பர பிரம்மன் தானே, அனவரதம் அகமென்றும் நிதித்தியாசிப்பாய்.